we kind of had, loss, all of that right in a row piled up. And then the next year is when I actually didn't feel like I was experiencing symptoms of heart problems, but part of the whole process of moving, switching doctors and all that, I started seeing a new primary care doctor who just did routine blood work and said, "Hey, this blood cell count is kind of like, this is kind of funky. This is kind of weird. Like, are you sure? Like, you feel okay? You're not dizzy? You're not lightheaded?" I was like, "Yeah, I think so. I think I'm fine."
Hey, welcome back. Today on the episode, I have a friend of mine. His name is Jason Headlee. If you remember, not too long ago, we had your wife on the show, on the podcast. So that means she's famous now. You're welcome. You can quit your job. She's making bank. She's been on the show. Now, that was Jen Headlee, if you remember. But today we got her husband, Jason, is on. Jason's currently serving as the camp director for Camp Monadnock here in our hometown up in southern New Hampshire. So we're going to be talking life lessons and leadership. So thank you, Jason, for being on the show.
Yeah, glad to do it.
Yeah, man, appreciate you so much and what you're doing. And as you know, as I told your wife, you and I have talked about before, the camp is now Camp Monadnock. It used to be Monadnock Bible Conference years ago. As I grew up there, my journeys, the huge part of who I am is due to that, and the people there and the facility and everything. So we were super pleased when you guys came in and kind of took over and set up shop. And it's awesome stuff. But what I want to do today is go back in your journey. Tell us a little bit about who you are. Where you come from, where'd you grow up, your family life, kind of that, the whole life story and in the Reader's Digest version of it, if you can. Yeah.
So I grew up in Michigan, actually. My family has been believers, Christ followers since I was born. So
you grew up in the faith.
Grew up in the faith. My dad was actually a youth pastor when I was real little.
Okay.
For a while, he took a break from ministry just to be able to support our family financially. So, so for several years, he was managing the local town restaurant, the big diner in town.
Yeah.
So knew everybody. Grew up in kind of a suburban.
So Michigan's kind of a big state. Whereabouts were?
Yeah, we were an hour north of Detroit. The name of the town is Marysville. So kind of actually right on the border to Canada. There's a river that separates Michigan from Canada. We were right on that river.
So you a Detroit fan?
Yeah, so I grew up.
Oh, man.
Tigers, Lions,
we
Red
were
Wings.
friends. We were friends.
It's recently been fun to cheer for the Lions. I did have to endure about 38 years of pain to
Well, we did too with the Patriots before the dynasty happened, but I get it.
Yeah. So grew up there, and then kind of towards the end of middle school, Dad started really wanting to be back into ministry and looking for opportunities, and was connected with an organization called Word of Life. We ran their youth ministry clubs in our church when he was a youth pastor and as a volunteer leader. So we had a lot of friends in that sphere, those guys that were doing that ministry. So when he started looking again, he got invited to join Word of Life, which is kind of an international organization, leading their short-term missions program. So then my freshman year of high school, we finished up football season. He got offered that job, and we moved out to Scroon Lake, New York, during the middle of my freshman year of high school. So then finished up high school there, went to Word of Life Bible Institute, which is it's a college, but it's a really focused curriculum, all Bible, ministry, theology.
That's in New York.
In New York, yeah. Then did that for a year, completed that program, went to Cedarville University back out in the Midwest in Ohio.
Yep.
Actually got my degree in business. Wasn't really thinking I was going to go back into full-time ministry, but the Lord had a different plan. So finished with my degree in business. Moved to Philadelphia for a year just because I had always lived in these small towns and thought, it'd be cool to live in a city.
I want to be a big city.
Yeah, I had some friends there. I was there for 1 year and realized, I really like to visit cities. I think they're really cool to wander around, but living I was in like a row house, so it wasn't,
Oh,
super
wow.
tiny like an
Yeah.
apartment, but it was, neighbor,
But you're still
neighbor,
in
neighbor,
this.
neighbor.
Yeah, you're still right next to people in the city. and-
Yeah, we were just
yeah.
inside Philadelphia proper. My roommates were actually med school students. It was one of my friends from high school and a couple of his friends, and they were going to school. I was working just in retail, like I was a manager for an express store out at the King of Prussia Mall, just outside of Philly, and yeah, I was just like, man, this is really like not very fulfilling. Like for being right out of college, I'm really making good money, and I got to do this like fun like city adventure, but it was like, this is not actually what I want to do. So that was a little bit of like a minor like life crisis. Like what is
Right.
what is going to be fulfilling? What am I going to be excited and passionate to get up and do? So at the end of that year, they were finishing school anyways. We didn't renew our lease. They went off to do their like med rotation things, and I went back home thinking I was just coming home for the summer. Worked at camp for another summer, like I'd done that, for years during college and whatever. And then basically got offered a full-time job to stay on and work for the Bible Institute.
It's always the
camp
pastors,
season.
missions kids who get the full-time
Right?
opportunity.
Get sucked in there. So
Yeah.
so then I stayed for like 17 years.
Wow.
So I was there from basically the year after I graduated college until so like 2003 until 2021, right after COVID. We made the move
Gotcha.
out here to Monadnock.
All right, so take us back. When did Jason's faith kind of become his own? Your faith in Christ, you kind of grew up in the faith. Pastor's
Grew
kid
up
and
in
all
the
that.
faith. I do remember like what I would consider genuinely like my salvation decision being really young, like praying with my mom after Sunday school one day. But the big change for me, that move from Michigan to New York was a big like catalyst. Like to be honest, had a horrible attitude about it. Freshman in high school, 14 years old. The town I grew up in was like a football town. Like it was one of those like towns in the movies where everything shuts down.
Right.
Everyone goes to the game. And I was really good at football. Like that was my sport. Other stuff, not as much. But
What position did you play?
linebacker.
Of course you did.
Yeah. So yeah, I was just, and I wasn't like a cool kid growing up. Like I was good at school. So I was like kind of nerdy, like kind of, I was a bigger kid. So kind of got picked on a little bit until football started. And then all of a sudden
Respect.
I was strong and popular because if you're good at football in that town, like you had this instant popularity.
Doesn't matter. You
credibility.
have a 4.0 GPA if you're laying people out on the gridiron.
Yeah. It really covered a lot of my like insecurities. All of a sudden, like having that in my life. So I was not happy about the move. And we had grown up there. All my friends were there. My cousins were there. Like,
And when you say you moved to
all
New
the
York,
stuff.
you're not talking about like New York. You're talking about
if
like
you picture New York and then just picture the opposite, right? So
It's
New York,
upstate.
way upstate, actually closer to Canada than to New York City.
Exactly.
In the Adirondack Mountains. So like super small town. Like I went from, my school in Michigan, I had a graduating class of around 200 students, kind of mid-sized school
100%,
out there. I graduated with 20 kids at Screen Lake Central in New York. The whole school, K through 12 in one building. Right, 20 kids, but it's a public school. Like this wasn't the private. The Christian school was actually a little bit smaller, but I went to the public school.
Wow.
About 20 kids per class. I was the valedictorian of that class, though, so
hey,
I had to beat out 19 other people. But I
you
did
got it. You did it though.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So that move, that whole first year, I had a horrible attitude about it. Complained whenever I had the opportunity to point out that I wasn't happy with the decision. But that first summer, I went on one of the missions trips that my dad was leading. Like that was his new job.
Okay,
That's what he was responsible for. So we actually went to Russia, and this was '97. So
Wow.
it was still very like communist influenced. Like not technically still being run as a dictatorship,
but still the residual and the effects of
yeah,
that.
I mean, there were still statues of Lenin up on the town corners. Like most people still lived in these giant block apartment buildings with multiple generations living in one apartment. Like it was still very, very oppressed. So
what was the mission focus there?
so evangelism stuff. It was a lot of like just outdoor open air evangelism. We went to orphanages and it was interesting. Orphanages, prisons, they really wouldn't let us go to like what I would say like their prime people. Like we didn't get to go to like schools or like theaters, but we could go to these kind of outskirts kind of things. And again, like that oppression, like the KGB literally followed us around and watched us. They didn't interfere with us. They didn't, we had all of our visas and all of our paperwork and the stuff we were supposed to do. So they never really got in the way or prevented us from doing anything, but they're always there, always just sitting back watching us.
Yeah.
And a couple things happened during that trip. One, I realized like, oh, like this is why my dad made this decision. Like I didn't really, I mean, I kind of knew, but I didn't really get it until I was like out there with him.
So what was it you saw?
So one, like hundreds of people responding to the gospel.
Wow.
Like in that culture, like those people were so starved for some kind of hope, something to live for, to look to. Like we would share the gospel, and almost every time people responded. So we were there for almost a month. It was like 3.5 weeks, something like that, just doing different things every day. Sometimes orphanages, sometimes prisons, sometimes just in a couple of the bigger cities, just out on the street. So one, that response to the gospel was just like I grew up in church, and our church like preached the gospel, and I, had seen people get saved before, but not really like on that level, like not at the same the same way people were responding there. And then another thing happened that was very like kind of eye opening for me, and set up some of my like future, like just the way God worked through some of those things, but. My grandpa, so my dad's dad, actually had a heart attack and passed away while we were in Russia.
So you would have been high school.
Yep. Yeah. So my family, this was, old school, small town Michigan. Like my grandparents actually lived down the street from each other. Wow. So my parents were high school sweethearts. Grandpa Headlee and Grandpa Gardner lived like 3 blocks down from each other. So interestingly, my dad's parents were not believers. Tougher home, kind of token Catholic. Like my dad had gone to catechism and stuff, but they didn't like go regularly. They
Catholic by association.
They weren't like, just by like tradition, not by actual like heart belief or anything like that. Yeah. And he was like a good man in the sense of he was like pretty moral and provided for his family and all that stuff, but wasn't like a comparing, wasn't compassionate, wasn't super involved in our lives, but he was at all my football games. We were at their house for holidays. We saw them all the time.
But he passed.
So he passed, and we're in Russia seeing all these people, make decisions for Christ. And I just had this like, oh man, like I don't even know. Like I actually think my grandpa's probably not going to heaven. Like I don't have any reason to believe that he had made a decision for Christ or was living that way. So then I was like, oh man, like I am a huge hypocrite. Like I'm out here doing all this stuff because it's the right Christian thing to do. And that's, and I'm kind of like wired that way, right? Like I'm an achiever, like I do I'm supposed to do. Yeah. So it was just this big, like, like kind of like wake up call for me. Not something that I still like feel guilty about or carry with me that I, that it was, it's up to the Holy Spirit. My grandpa had heard the gospel and had plenty of opportunities to respond, and maybe he did and just didn't, really show. But it was, I would say, like my wake up call to like, like I need to either like be all in on this or like, why am I doing this? Like just to like token, like follow the rules, do what's expected of me, whatever. So fortunately, praise the Lord, the result of that was I actually really got pretty serious about my faith, started doing my own quiet time, my own Bible study. We started a Bible study in the public school that, we started seeing kids get saved in our school and go into church events and stuff like that with us. So it really did like turn from just I went to church because my parents took me and I did the stuff I was supposed to do to really taking it seriously and making it something that was my own at a pretty young age. So I would say it saved me from a lot of, because for sure my friends from school, small school, not a lot to do. So like primary recreation was, drinking, smoking, their parties and stuff on the weekend. So I think that decision happening at the time it did probably prevented me from doing a lot of stuff that I eventually probably would have given him and done anyway. It's just because that's what most of my friends were doing. It also, interesting, I got back from that trip and I was playing soccer, which I was not thrilled about, but super small school. It's the only sport that they had in the fall.
Oh, wow.
And like you didn't really have to be very good to make the teams because there's only, you know,
You'd be
there's
willing to play the game.
80 kids in my whole high school, right? Like if
Yeah.
you're willing to play the sport, like you got to be on the team. So I was
Yeah.
like, all right, I guess I'll learn this, whatever. Another guy who was a year ahead of me, so I hadn't really had classes with him, wasn't really friends with him yet, but he also, his grandfather passed away that summer, and we both missed the first week or 2 weeks of soccer practice because of going out for these funerals. Came back, and our coach was like, "Hey, glad you're back. You just have to make up all the laps that you missed from the weeks of
you and
practice."
this
So we
dude were running
had
laps
about
together.
like 20 miles of makeup laps to do together after our regular practice. We had to, knock out a couple miles every day. So we really built this friendship on these makeup laps that we were running because our grandpas died. And he ended up becoming my best friend in high school. That's the guy that I lived with in Philadelphia while he was in med school. Accountability partner, really in a lot of ways. One of like a very small number of believers in that school at the point when we were there.
Sure.
So it was just, another way that I saw God kind of working. Like, not that, it's a small school. We would have like met each other, got to know each other, but it really like kicked off and cemented that friendship early
cool.
on because we had that time together.
So in your journey now, you met Jen somewhere in here.
Yeah.
That was at Word of Life?
So that was at Word of Life. So I did, right out of high school, did the first year program at Word of Life, which is that like, it's college, but it's not math, not English. Like the first year program is all Bible theology ministry.
Gotcha.
So I did that, transferred to Cedarville, got my degree, and it was when I came back to be on staff at Word of Life that Jen came out and was a student. Now we're only a year apart, so it wasn't like a weird like staff guy dating the student. Like she had taken a couple years after school, had a job, did all that stuff. So. She came out as a student during her second. We actually didn't. We maybe met, but we didn't really hang out. That school's a little bit bigger, so you don't know everybody. So we didn't hang out until her second year, but then we actually did winter camp together. At that point, I was in charge of all the counselors for the winter camp, and she was one of our like mid-level leaders, like we called them unit leaders. She was in charge of like a group of counselors. So we worked together all winter, and at the end of that, really was like, oh man, this girl is kind of awesome. I should probably try and make something happen here. So, in my own creative way, confessed my interest for her and started pursuing that relationship. And then we were just friends and I say that kind of facetiously. I think she thought she meant it at the time or whatever.
She tried to friend zone you? Is that what I'm hearing?
She really did. Really shut it down for a few months, like all spring, all summer. And then when she came back in the fall, was kind of like, hey, I really don't think this is a just friends situation. Like I have friends, and that's not how we treat each other. Like that's not what this is. And then we kind of finally like
you were like, I know
like this is like a more than that. This is a thing. So then we started dating. She actually went back to California because she had finished school. So we did the long distance thing for a few months, and then she moved back out. And
I'm shocked that you guys are here and not there.
Yeah.
Like, and I say that somewhat facetiously, but I like some of the guys I grew up with that I know, they married, but then they moved to where their ladies are from.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, that's not very biblical. I try to pull out the Old Testament. Did you see how it's supposed to be? Like,
right.
But it's kind of funny.
Yeah. And we're not necessarily, we're wherever the Lord takes us, we're willing to go.
No, totally understand.
At the time, I had the full-time job at Word of Life, so it was kind of like, hey, I'm pretty sure this is where God has me, and this is what I'm supposed to be doing right now. So if this is going to go somewhere, so this is kind of funny. We had been hanging out for almost a year at that point, but it was like only, I don't even know if it was a month after we officially started dating, because so we started dating, I think in October. She was finishing up the semester in December. Like she started as like a mid-year student. So she was going to be going home, like back to California. So we've only been officially dating for like a month. I was like, hey, basically you're going to have to like move. Like if you go back to California, like, not that we're going to like break up immediately, but we're not going to do the long distance thing indefinitely. If you're like, I'm serious about this. And if you're serious about this, you're going to have to like make a plan to move back here.
Wow.
So that was a pretty big conversation for like month one of dating. But Yeah.
Hey, it worked.
But she did it.
Yeah.
So,
And you got 2 boys, right?
yeah.
And
Yep. 2 boys, Lucas, Connor. They're 13, 11. So we're just finishing up 7th grade and 5th grade.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit sad. I mean, it's awesome. We're excited about it, but this will be, we're doing all of our last like elementary school things this year, you know? So, so yeah, about to have 2 middle schoolers coming up.
Oh man, I know we're just finishing the last year of middle school, then I'll have 2 high schoolers. But so tell me this, Jason. Let's shift gears. We'll dive a little deeper. Throughout your journey so far, I didn't know half that stuff. I mean, Jen kind of shined light on some of it, but it's super cool to hear kind of you're part of this whole journey. Give me a couple of people who are influential on you. I mean, we talk life lessons and leadership, and I know you've gone through some things. Since I've known you, you have. Yeah. We'll get to those here in a minute, but a couple of people who have been really influential for you. I mean, did you go through life by yourself? I mean, did you? No. You said you mentioned an accountability partner. Yeah. So give me.
So several, and I can just kind of maybe bullet point a couple of them, and then if there's any that you want to like dive deeper into. One was for sure my dad, like highly influential, godly influence. Yeah, taught me all things about manhood and life and godliness.
How did he do that? Did he like go work through books with you? Did he just kind of
honestly, it was more like that day-to-day life discipleship, like just being an example. He was, I would not say like overly like strict or legalistic or hovering, but like he would call out behavior that was inappropriate and have conversations about it. And
so he had like a healthy discipline / life example.
Yeah. I definitely would say we were, so, I'm in my 40s, so I grew up in a little bit of that older school. Like there wasn't that like your parents are your best friends mentality at that point. That wasn't really a thing, but like we got along, we connected on, especially through sports. Like that was a big venue for us. Like he had grown up in that same town, being the high school football star at the time, so that was a big point of like kind of bonding for us. But
that's cool.
But yeah, so he was a huge influence in my life. John is the guy that I was talking about. He's now a doctor out in Colorado.
Oh wow!
But he had a really big impact on my life just in that friendship accountability role. Like we really went through high school, and I think stayed out of a lot of bad things because we had each other to kind of fall back on.
You still connect with him?
Yeah, not as regularly. Like we're pretty kind of doing our own things at this point, but we still text, still get together once in a while. Yeah. I've for sure we found people that are kind of more in our current circles that we're closer with, but yeah, still good friends. Still would like if something came up, needed help, we'd be there for each other kind of thing. Yeah. And then when I started working at Word of Life, there were 2 guys that were basically my 2 levels of bosses. Like at the time, I was what's called a discipleship coordinator, which is kind of like being a resident director is what most colleges would call it. So I was like in charge of a section of dorms. So the dean of men at the time and then the president of the school at the time, both were super influential in that like early manhood, like, hey man, you just can't. So this is interesting. If you know me now, most people would kind of be surprised by this, but I had a really short temper. Like I was very easily upset and I had very little control over my speech. Like I was sarcastic. Like that was the way that I got approval, especially that like teenage, early college, very kind of insecure and making fun of other people was a way to kind of offset that. And I was like quick-witted and like, so I would gain approval for it, but essentially at the expense of others, right? Yeah. And then, I was just really easily upset and I would just say what I was thinking, which was often not really,
helpful or beneficial or kind.
Any of that. So those guys, particularly with those 2 behaviors, but for sure with other things, just very consistently, hey, Jason, you can't do that, man. Like that was inappropriate. You can't talk that way. You need to. So they really not just corrected the behavior, but helped me rethink like why are you so upset about that? Why does that make you feel that way? Like kind of help me get to that next level.
So they pulled some layers back on you to kind of help
to help kind of like if you were trusting God in this situation, you wouldn't be that upset about that. You wouldn't need to respond in that way. If you were putting others before yourself, you wouldn't talk to them that way. You wouldn't joke that way. So they in that like early to mid 20s kind of phase of my life really helped me correct a lot of what I think could have been behavior that was detrimental to me, both in my career, work life,
Sure.
as well as obviously, family, personal life, and all that. So yeah, John and Rick were their names, and super helpful and influential, and kind of helping me once I was kind of out of the house and out of my dad's sphere of as direct influence. Taking those next steps, and they both knew. So John and his wife Kristen did our marriage counseling.
Oh wow. Okay.
So they were super involved in that whole relationship as Jen and I got started, and spoke into that a lot. They're still good friends. He is the basically like the dean or curriculum director for Liberty's School of Divinity now.
Oh.
Down at Liberty University. And then Rick, actually, I got close to him when I worked for him at the school, but we knew each other a lot longer than that. His kids are my age. So
wow. Okay.
They were also staff kids at Word of Life. We went to high school together. So he had known me since I was a punk little kid. Just once I was actually working for him, took a deeper interest and investment into my life. So he's actually now a pastor up in Epsom, New Hampshire. Oh, yeah. So we all kind of headed the New Hampshire direction within a few years of each other. And so it's kind of cool. We get to go up and connect with them once every couple months. We'll go to church and hang out. And
so with your experience with these men in particular, how valuable would you indicate to other people the importance of having others in your life who are willing to speak in or have that room to speak into your life?
Yeah, I think it's critical. I think it's how God designed us. I think it is what the Bible mandates. So Rick does this teaching all the time. You need a Timothy, a Paul, and an Epaphroditus in your life. So you need someone that's mentoring you, that's speaking into you, that's older, wiser. You need a Timothy, someone that's younger that you're pouring into, that you're teaching. And then you need an Epaphroditus, which is that peer level accountability partner. So really, as soon as you are, I guess, essentially old enough to be an Epaphroditus, which I honestly would say could start pretty young in your manhood journey. I mean, middle school, high school, as soon as you're able to have something to offer, to mentor, starting to constantly, and those people are going to change. You're not always going to get to be around the same people. Hopefully, as a guy in his 40s now, I've had the opportunity to have a lot of different Timothys kind of come through my life. A lot of those relationships are, especially the nature of what we do. We were at a college that was very cyclical, and even at camp now, our young staff kind of rotate through. A lot of them are with us for just a year or two. Right. It's kind of a stepping stone, and then they move on to their careers or
that's a crucial stepping stone you get to be a part of.
Yeah. So and even the Epaphroditus is I had a lot of really close friends because we worked at Word of Life for so long, right? 17 years. I had several guys that I would have put in that category out there because we. Right. Yeah. I mean, there were guys that we worked in the same department together for a decade. Very close relationships. So that was kind of a big thing coming out here. I'm still friends with those guys, but we don't see each other every day. Right. We don't work together. So
kind of making new ones.
Yeah, trying to find those relationships, especially as an adult man, I feel that's kind of a challenge, the friendships that you're willing to step into and
I mean, that's part of the reason why we're having this conversation, Jason, is Bill and I have noticed some of these things, and we say life lessons in leadership. Yeah. And a lot of guys, I mean, they're actually willing to talk when you sit down with them. Mm-hmm. And for some of us, we grew up with our dads would go and talk, but they would always have to be doing something, maybe hunting or fishing or, and they'd talk about that, stuff while they're doing it. They don't have to do this eye to eye stuff. Mm-hmm. That was always weird. So part of what we're doing now is kind of helping to shift that a little bit. Dudes, open up, man. Yeah. Your life story speaks to me, mine to yours. But so that's, part of the reason why we're here. But give me, I know you've had a couple of, pretty serious life experiences that you've gone through personally. Yeah. So, share one of those in kind of what you learned, the life lesson you learned, kind of walking through that.
Yeah. So we kind of hit a series of difficult things. So let me kind of bullet through that timeline.
Sure. Absolutely.
So 2019, fall of 2019, my dad passed away pretty suddenly, had a heart attack. Now, he had health issues. It wasn't totally out of the blue unexpected, but there was no progression. It was just a very very sudden.
Yeah, you
heart
didn't get to
attack,
sit
he's
at his
gone.
bedside and say
Right.
goodbye and all that. Yeah.
Right. Literally, I'd seen him that morning. I was running a big event. I stopped by the house. He was out mowing the lawn, kind of waved, said hi, regular Saturday, Saturday thing. And then my mom called me later that afternoon. Hey, Dad, I think Dad had a heart attack. The ambulance is on the way here. Can you come home? Kind of thing. Like, because we still, lived together at that point, or in the same. We were both working at Word of Life, and so that happened in 2019. Then obviously 2020 COVID, changed a lot of things for us. I was running a college and camp, so all that got shut down. Like we just were, in New York had a very, a very heavy-handed, stringent approach to how they handled all that. So that was a tough kind of stretch. Coming out of that is when we left Word of Life, and that wasn't something we were looking for, to be honest. Like that was like this opportunity came up kind of simultaneous to some changes in direction at the Bible Institute that they were making. So we chose to come. Like it was, we really felt like it was the Lord leading us, but it wasn't like, hey, you know what we want to do? We want to pack up, leave all of our friends, go do a new ministry. Like that wasn't really on our radar. It was just us kind of seeing what the Lord was doing and how some things worked out and stepping into that. But that was like a loss process for us, like leaving, a ministry that we'd invested in so much, friends
100%.
and all that. So that was 2021.
That's when you joined Berea Ministries.
Yeah, that's when we joined Berea Ministries, came on as the site director at Camp Monadnock. So we finished up the 2021 academic year for the Bible Institute and then made the move out here that summer. That fall, my brother also had a heart attack and passed away. So that was way more unexpected. Like he's my younger brother. Like he's, at the time he was 37, I was 39. Like it was not something. Now, again, like he had some health issues. It wasn't like totally, but it was much more surprising, being way younger and not really having major like symptoms or anything leading up to it. So we kind of had, loss, all of that right in a row piled up. And then the next year is when I actually didn't feel like I was experiencing symptoms of heart problems, but part of the whole process of moving, switching doctors and all that, I started seeing a new primary care doctor who just did routine blood work and said, hey, this blood cell count is kind of like, this is kind of funky. This is kind of weird. Like, are you sure? Like, you feel okay? You're not dizzy? You're not lightheaded? I was like, yeah, I think so. I think I'm fine. It's like, well, you should why don't you just go see a hematologist, like get this checked out. And originally kind of made it sound like concerns about like blood disorder or cancer or something based on the information that he had. So we went down that route, got all that stuff checked out. They're like ruled a bunch of stuff out, but then said, well, this is still kind of weird. It could be a heart murmur, like a little hole. Why don't you go get tested for that?
Yeah, cardiology and
yep. So then got switched over to cardiology and all this, like months in between each thing.
Sure.
And really, I thought I felt fine. Like I wasn't having major. Like I was still going to the gym, still doing hikes, like not feeling like, oh man, like something's wrong. I need to get checked out. But my blood was saying that's not true. You should probably get this looked at. So through that process, everyone was because I wasn't really having symptoms. Like all the doctors were very, let's just be cautious. Let's check this out, but very like low key. So then we finally elevated it to kind of a higher level test, and I could tell so it was one that I had to like go unconscious for. They went in and like did the actual scope and checked everything out. And I woke up from that. There was this real sudden change in like demeanor of everyone. They're like, wait, tell me about your family history again. Tell me about this. Tell me about that. I was like, yeah. So rehearsed stuff that I had like shared a bunch of times, but now they were looking at it saying, well, actually, I don't know why your cholesterol numbers are as good as they are. Your blood pressure is good, but like you need a triple bypass. Wow. So that was yeah, just all of a sudden, like you're saying, I could have had a heart attack basically at any moment, like it was, he's like, the doctor's like, well, we're going to get you in the next few weeks and you can like walk to the mailbox, but like, don't do anything like strenuous, like don't exert, don't, I was like, I literally went to the gym this morning. Like what? Yeah. He's like, yeah, don't do that. Like, so
just lay here till we can get you in.
Yeah. It was not quite like, hey, we're going to keep you and do the surgery today, but it was kind of like, hey, like you need to take things, as easy as possible. So,
well, I mean, what goes through your mind? So,
yeah, it was a lot of like, well, how could this be this bad? And I didn't know.
Shock.
Didn't have symptoms, didn't have any of that. So there was a lot of just, kind of like confusion, frustration. Two, it made me get some really like practical things in line that I knew I should have done before, like just standard, like, hey, young men with families, like get your will done, get your power of attorney done, like all this stuff that's like, you should do it. But I had kind of like, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to live forever.
I can down the road a little bit.
Yeah, I'll deal with that later. So it did make us have some very like practical conversations about like, hey, what if this did happen? That honestly, I would advise, have those conversations when you're not like, thinking before you get the diagnosis, before the accident happens, like walk through those, what would happen if. End of life, be prepared, all that stuff. So that helped us on that level.
So then you had to have triple bypass. Is what you
triple bypass. The one thing I would say that it really, one way, probably there's a bunch of ways, but one way that it really like kind of strengthened our faith. There was kind of a lot of questioning of like, well, why did God move us? Why are we doing this? Did we do something wrong that we didn't get to keep doing? Something that we were happy to do, but I had been seeing a doctor regularly in New York the whole time. Like that was part of our insurance requirements and whatever. And this hadn't got caught. So there was a part of us that was like, maybe God literally saved our lives. Well, saved my life and, our
family from the loss.
Family from by making this move, seeing a new doctor, getting a new perspective that kind of put into line that chain of events. If he hadn't noticed the blood cell count thing and kind of said, hey, you should really go to a hematologist, like you shouldn't just, kind of like and progress that all the way through.
So what did you take away from all that? I mean, you're saying I saw a little bit of God's sovereignty in that.
Yeah. So I would say it was a big reaffirmation of, hey, God's in control of all this. He has a plan that's kind of way beyond my scope or imagination. Like I was making the move all about kind of work and character and my personal preferences, not like, oh, like actually what I want to do is make sure you still stayed alive. So I had you go see a different doctor, like it just kind of like helped us zoom out a little bit on how much bigger God's plan is than ours. And then for sure we got to see, his faithfulness and like I'm feeling good now, like clean bill of health, back to normal activities, no restrictions. We got to see a lot of people step up and serve and felt very like cared for in the process. Like typically we just haven't been the ones that have been in a difficult spot. Like we've been the ones that have been caring for others.
It's different when you're on the receiving end of that.
So like going through those last couple of years, especially, when my dad died, when my brother died, and then when I had the surgery and the recovery time and all that, was really the first, that couple of years was the first time in either of our lives, in our marriage, where we were like on the receiving end of the body of Christ, really stepping up and meeting physical needs, praying for us, all those things. And I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And this is like, again, like how God designed it. Like this is how we're supposed to care for each other.
Yeah, how the church is supposed to operate.
So yeah, it just opened up that perspective of, oh, this is what it's like not to be the one taking the meal, not to be the one, making the phone call or going to do the thing, but like being, getting to be served and appreciate that God put that in our lives and built those relationships. And,
that's what a testimony now, coming out of that for sure. But so let's talk just for a few minutes. Your current role, you're serving as camp director. Yeah. And I don't know, just for our listeners' sake, I mean, I'll speed us up. I mean, the camp wasn't doing very well. It needed to be revamped, and so it was bought out. And Berea Ministries bought it out, and then you were hired and put on, you and Jen, and that was kind of like hey, here's this ministry. We're going to help rebuild it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what have been like the big challenges, what's the faith journey looked like since you've taken over? Because it's been a few years now.
Yeah. I mean, so we are coming up on year 4. Like in July 2nd will be 4 years that we've been in Jaffrey. So I would say, some of the like kind of practical leadership life lessons were, hey, we just inherited this ministry with an incredible heritage and years of people who have made life-changing decisions and are very emotionally, spiritually attached to this place. Yeah. But also, on some levels, at least in the, monetarily, physically, kind of failed. Like it did. It was essentially out of business and was given to Berea so that it would stay a Christian ministry. And so how do we balance the tradition and honor the heritage while also making the changes we need to make to be able to stay in business? Like it's one of the hard things in ministry. It's not about money. It's about the spiritual impact and the life change. But also we don't get to do that if we don't have the funds responsible to do it. Yeah. So trying to work through that, and Word of Life is also an organization that have been around for a long time. Mm-hmm. So I was pretty used to the whenever you're trying to change something, there's resistance, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's a classic. I'm sure church leaders experience this all the time. Like it's always hard to make a change when you have so many people who have been impacted by something that it was this way, and they have in their mind like even down to like, what, you painted the dining hall? Like
you took the back table out of the
kitchen? Yeah, I mean stuff that like
I grew up at that back table, by the way.
And there's like so there's like all that stuff that's like stuff if you weren't a part of it, you
wouldn't have known. Yeah,
wouldn't even think. Like I didn't even realize when I did that was a big deal to people. So I think learning to like take the time to talk through with people, hey, what are the things that are important? What are the traditions? And trying to sort out like, hey, what of that can we keep and what of that can we preserve? But what are things that like, hey, this just has to change in order for us to move forward, in order to still be an organization 10 years from now?
I think that's a healthy question even for the church.
Yeah.
I mean, we kind of hold people's feet to the fire in the name of tradition, and actually, my wife once told me, I'm probably in trouble for saying this online, but she said, tradition sometimes is peer pressure from the dead. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, snap. I mean, but it is true. A lot of us in our churches were resistant to change, sometimes to our own detriment. So it sounds like you were learning that. And
trying to figure out the pacing of it and, what can change now, what needs to change,
and being willing to make them when you identify them.
Yeah, being willing to make the change, being willing to receive the criticism for it, like that's just kind of a part of it. And how do you handle that with some grace and
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. But you guys are now operating again year round. You've got programs that are happening, and you're growing. Yeah, bringing in cash flow, and still a lot of work to be done, but.
Yeah, so still tons of, and this is typical. Honestly, when we got to Word of Life, it was kind of this way. It's just a lot of old buildings. There a lot of these ministries.
Yeah, put this into perspective. New England old buildings, like harsh winters, like
Well, yeah. I mean,
built
our
in the way
our
back
main
in the
building
day.
was built in the 1800s.
Yeah, 1800s.
Like it's crazy. So it's awesome, and there's this like heritage and like
history to it and everything.
Yeah, but it also there's some practical like difficulties to some of that. Mm-hmm. Like you go in our basement and you can see like tree trunk beams, like it's that level old.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And a lot of these ministries, there was this big boom in kind of these camping ministries. Word of Life experienced it. Some people might know like Camp Rumney a little bit further up north, and Monadnock Bible Conference. A lot of these places really peaked in the 90s, and then just a pretty steady downhill trend in attendance and revenue and all of those things since then. which resulted in tons of deferred maintenance because they still wanted to do all the ministry stuff they were doing, but they weren't bringing in as much money, so they couldn't reinvest in the property. So we basically, 10 years ago had to go through a very similar situation at Word of Life, where it's like, these buildings are like falling apart. Like, we've got to do something.
So it sounds like you were kind of the right man for the job.
I definitely feel like, there were a lot of ways in which, all the experiences I had really prepared me to come in here. Not that I was like looking forward to starting over again with an old property, but it gave me the like, oh yeah, we can do this. Like, actually we have done this. We've done this before.
See, that's
God
huge,
provided
though,
the donors. He provided the things that were needed. And now, like, if you go visit that campus, it's been transformed.
Right.
And we're starting to see it piece by piece at Camp Monadnock, one building by building, section by section, getting to, fix some of these issues and redo some things.
It's funny. It's funny you say that, because I remember talking to, I think, multiple people by now, about, just because a lot of us who grew up here in the town, obviously our history is this location, and saying to people, oh yeah, have you met Jason and Jen? And, oh, wonderful. Like, they're just like, when I met you, obviously you guys come now here to the church, and Jen works with us on the youth staff and stuff, but it wasn't meeting a person who's like stressed out or pulling their hair out, or we wouldn't have even have known the situations and the life circumstances you guys were going through had you not been, intimately involved in the local church here. Yeah. So that was like, a blessing for us to watch. Here's this couple who, in a way, is going through hell. These, loss, and then, oh my gosh, I need triple bypass surgery. And then at the same time, trying to revamp this ministry, all within the same 5-6 years. And so for us looking in, we're just like, power couple. You know what I mean? Not to boost your ego, but that
is,
really spoke
not always
volume.
how it feels. But
but it spoke volumes to us as we're watching. We're like, how are they doing this? But I think it's coming to light now. You're saying, we're just bringing some life experience. Obviously there's a lot of trust in that. Mm-hmm. You're willing to be ministered to while you're ministering, and I think there's such a balance there that a lot of people don't understand. You're not
honestly, that was something that was a bigger struggle when I was younger. Like, there wasn't as many hardships, so there wasn't as many kind of needs to be ministered, but there was that like pride level, like, oh, I don't need help. I'm not going to ask for help. Now, if people offer help, man, arms wide open. I would love help.
I mean, we had like a little splinter of that. I forget what had happened. I had gotten sick or something, and down and out with whatever it was. And the church did like a meal train thing for us. And I'm like, I'm going to pretend like I'm sick for another 4 weeks. This food is great. Yeah. We didn't have to go grocery shopping. The fridge was always stocked. And my wife is a fantastic cook, but we were joking about like, this is nice. You're getting home cooked meals just delivered to your house. But no, it's it is cool to be able to sit and listen to how God kind of not only brought you here, but also provided for, guided those sovereign moments of like health, and then, brought you through a season of loss. But so here's we're going to wrap this up, and I think you're going to need to come back for part 2. But just saying, give us, through all of this, through what you've shared to this morning, what is one piece of advice you would just look at an aspiring leader, and say, hey, if you learn anything before you go into this, just learn this. What would that be?
Yeah, one piece of advice. I think
I know there's like
especially for men, like having those relationships in your life, it's very easy to isolate, to be prideful, to think you don't need help. Having those Timothy, Paul, Epaphroditus relationships in your life, the friends, the people that you're pouring into, and that older, maybe it's your dad and that's awesome, but if not, then that mentor in your life that's feeding wisdom and godly guidance into you. But yeah, having those other relationships, like we weren't made to do this on our own, and it will eventually lead to failure, to personal, kind of ruin if you try and like pridefully push your way through everything by yourself. Yeah,
no, that's really, really good. Yeah, I do want to wrap up, but let me just fire one more. I know I said one more ago, but I do got to know, because for those of us that are watching you, and if you share this with your staff, and I share it with the church and all, how do you balance this? I mean, because we didn't even talk about the fact that you're coaching. You've been coaching your boys, and so you're leading a ministry, you're involved in obviously your home life, your marriage, your fatherhood. You're involved in things here at the church, and Jen's involved here. How do you balance that to where it's healthy, for you and Jen, and then for you and Jen and the boys, and then.
Yeah, for Jen and I feel like we really have to evaluate that regularly, and we've kind of shifted time and priorities. So I'm not a big like work-life balance, like you need to chop your schedule up and work X hours here and X hours there. There are times that the ministry is very demanding and takes a lot of hours, and there are times that our boys need a lot of attention and take a lot of hours. So I don't have some like roadmap or magic like formula to the number of hours, but I do know that we regularly are seeking the Lord and talking to each other. Hey, like this season, I'm going to coach. So we did like a flag football thing. The boys were super into it. There wasn't like in order for them to do it, I basically had to coach. And it was awesome. And we had a great time and made new friends and built new relationships. We're able to share Christ with a few people that we would have not met if I wasn't coaching. So we made that a priority for a season. This spring, I'm actually not coaching a team. Like I'm just attending games because they're on different teams and I wanted to make both their games and all that. So it's like this steady, like kind of seeking the Lord and evaluating like, well, what can we do this season? What do we feel like God is kind of calling us to, and how do we continue to realign those priorities accordingly and not just kind of get locked into like, well, this is what we always do. Because otherwise, we say yes to too many things and can't keep up with them all.
I love the way you answered that though, Jason, because it's for me, it's part of like, keeping in step with the Holy Spirit. We always think, some of these biblical commands are in the code of conduct area, and they are, obviously keep in step with the Holy Spirit. Obviously you want fruit of the Holy Spirit in your life, but part of that fruit, I think is being able to do exactly what you just said. Hey, things are going to ebb and they're going to flow and they're going to change. And as we walk as believers, as we walk in this marriage, as we walk with our boys, as we walk with this ministry, we have to be willing to keep in step with what the Holy Spirit's leading us to do. And that may mean saying no to some things, saying yes to others. So I think it's a beautiful answer. But look, we're going to wrap it up. I so appreciate you, Jason. I so appreciate you being here. I do want to have you back. I think, part of Bill and I's plan is to have our guests come back, actually do a Devo with us, take a part of your life and flesh it out. Here's what we learned, and here's some things to take away from it. So the listeners can look forward to hearing from you again. But God bless you and your ministry, and I'll see you Sunday, I guess, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, thanks so much.
Thanks for joining. Yeah. See you next time.